Hey makeup friends! Today we are going to be doing an eyeshadow palette declutter. My collection has gotten out of control. I can no longer house everything on the shelves that I have set aside for eyeshadow palettes, and I'm feeling very overwhelmed by it, to be honest. So I'm going to dig them all out. We're going to go through it. It's not going to be a collection video today, so I'm just going to be showing you the items that I am decluttering. But I did film a separate eyeshadow palette collection video after I did the declutter. I've already done the declutter. I know how many I've decluttered, but I'm going to hold on to that for now, and let's just go through the process. Here we go. All right, so we have piles and piles and piles and piles of palettes sitting here. There are 219 palettes. That is excessive by anybody's standards. We also have a giant black tea lemonade to get us through this. So I think how I'm going to do this, rather than go through every single one of these 219 palettes, is that I'm going to just show you in groups of maybe 10 which palettes I am getting rid of, and then I'm going to do a separate video showing you my actual palette collection once I have curated it down a bit. So the goal in mind is to narrow this down to 150, which is still an excessive amount, but a bit more manageable than what I've got currently going on here. But I'm not married to that idea. So the declutter is going to go as it goes. I'm either going to declutter more than that or less than that. We're going to find out together, but I think that's just the way I'm going to do it. Otherwise this video is going to be forever long and nobody wants that. So I will be back with the first grouping of 10 to show you. Alright, I have gone through, done my first round of cuts. I think I've got about 70 set aside that I absolutely for sure want to keep. The rest of these require a little bit more consideration, but these are 10 that I will definitely be getting rid of. So I'll just walk you through them. First of all, we have this one here from Essence. This is Coral Me Maybe, and I just don't feel it's particularly coral. Like it's very standard. It's a very neutral kind of palette. I have those in spades, and this one doesn't bring anything super special to the table, so I'm going to pass that one on. I'm going to stop saying I'm going to pass it on, because just suffice it to say, all of these palettes, what I end up doing whenever I do declutters, particularly of eyeshadow palettes, is like I've got like a hierarchy, like a tiered list of friends, and so like the best friend gets the first choice, and then I've got another super makeup enthusiast, and then another one, and then it just goes from there. So I do try to rehome all of these products before throwing them into the garbage, so the vast majority of them do get rehomed. If anything is like super crumbly or super old, anything of that sort, then no, I'm not going to pass that along. But suffice it to say, I do try to rehome all of these products. I don't just throw them into the garbage. Okay, that out of the way. There's two here from Colourpop. This one is Statement Piece. This one is far more coral than the other one, but still, it's just not a color that I typically wear. And then this one over here is their pink 5-pan called Too Hot, or Haute, I guess. And I don't get any use out of these, so there's no point in keeping them. This hurts, okay, but when I'm going into this declutter, I am just refusing to think about the dollars spent, because clearly there's been one or two. If I've got 200 palettes, that's a lot of money invested into makeup. So I'm just not even thinking about the price on these. These are both from Charlotte Tilbury. This one is Bella Sophia. There's the colors. And then this one is Pillow Talk, which what from Charlotte Tilbury isn't Pillow Talk. And it's so lackluster. Like, I am fairly light-skinned. Like, I am an NC20, I am light. I'm not fair, but I'm light, and this doesn't show up on me. So if you have anything deeper than me, it's a no-go. But what I found instead are these ones here from Kiko Milano. They're not exact dupes, but like, this is a much punchier version of what I had hoped this Charlotte Tilbury to be. So if I had to choose between these two, it would be Kiko, which is the choice that I'm making. And then this one over here from Kiko Milano, this one's Dolce Diva. Again, definitely not a dupe, but it's gonna get more use than this one will. This one, the pictures made it look like it was going to be much more purple than it is, and it's very much like a bronzy brown sort of palette. These are both satin shades. This is sort of satin and this is a bit more of a shimmer metallic, so there's really no mattes in here, and I never use it. So it's time to see if somebody else wants those. My best friend is more fair than I am, so the Pillow Talk one might actually work really well for her. I don't think I told you the first one that I showed you is Dolce Diva. Aren't they both Dolce Diva? Yes, oh my gosh, okay. Sorry, Stylish Coral, that's this one. And then this one is Sleek Mauve, or Mauve, as you Americans say. This one, I think I found this at like Winners or Marshalls, one of those stores. This is the Narcissist palette, the Wanted palette. And I mean, I do like NARS eyeshadows, but this is just a color story that I do have a multitude of times, and I prefer other palettes over this one, so there's no point keeping it because it just keeps getting moved to the back of a drawer and never gets dug out. So that one is going. And this one here from Colored Rain, this is the Colored Rain X Power palette. This came out a couple years ago. It's very pretty, but again, I just, for whatever reason, don't reach for it. I have really no complaints about the Colored Rain formula, but it's just, I know, like looking at this, I'm sort of second guessing myself because that is a really, really pretty purple. But I know that I don't use it, even though that is a beautiful purple. I think, okay, what I'm going to do is if none of my friends want this palette, I will dig that pan out and save that. The rest of them I just don't use, and I do have them over and over again, but that one is gorgeous. BH Cosmetics, this one is Summer in Saint Tropez, and I bought it for the like completionist aspect. It doesn't even look like I've swatched it, to be perfectly honest. Like it just does not, it's just not a color story that inspires me. The shadows are beautiful, as I would expect them to be. Like BH does have fantastic quality, but it's just not a palette that when I look at it, I really, like, I don't see looks coming together. And for that reason, like I look at it and then I put it away because it just doesn't really do anything for me. So going forward, I'm going to like really make a concerted effort not to buy things just for the sake of completion, because it doesn't really matter. Like I can still rank the BH palettes that I have. I mean, those are pretty. Not pretty enough to save the palette for me, but they are pretty. So what I was trying to say before I cut myself off is, even if I wanted to rank all of my Weekender palettes from BH, even if I don't have this one, I can still rank what I have. Like I don't have to have every single one that the brand offers. You know what I mean? Like I don't think that you guys expect that from me, I hope. So at any rate, this is one that never ever gets used. It's time to let it go. Same with this one here, Natasha Denona Sunset. I wanted this for ages because Natasha Denona, and then it went on some massive sale, I don't know how long ago. I bought it, I used it, and I was underwhelmed. The yellow, very disappointing. The red, also disappointing. The shimmers are really great, but again, they're not unique enough for me to want to keep this entire palette. And frankly, the shades, like there's no shades in here that are unique enough to make me want to like pop them out of the palette and just keep those individual shades. So it's time to say goodbye. And then this one here, I did mean to do like an actual dedicated review on it, and then life got in the way. So I know I have talked about it in a previous video, but we're going to talk briefly about it again. It's a beast. This is the BH palette and Doja Cat collab. And there are some like standout really pretty shades, but overall this formula just doesn't feel the same to me as their typical formula, particularly when it comes to the shimmers. They're just not, I mean, this one is obviously an exception, that one is beautiful, but for the most part they're just not as punchy as what BH typically is. And the mattes in here are fine, they're okay, they're workable, but they're nothing that really like blows you away. So it's not worth keeping a giant palette like this for one or two hits. Like it's really not. And it's just not a palette. Again, it doesn't super inspire me. I like that there are like a mixture of colorful shades and some more neutral elements, but their BFF palette far outshines this one, and the quality of that one is far superior to this one, so I'm going to be keeping that one. And as pretty as this is, I know I have this shade in one of the BH palette, or one of the Colourpop palettes. The It's a Mood palette has one very similar to this, which is even prettier. So I'm going to see if one of my friends wants this one, but I don't. Okay, we're back with another 10 here. So up first, this is the Hasina 2 by Blush Tribe. I don't even think Blush Tribe is around anymore, to be honest. This is such a pretty color story, and that is what makes me save it every time I declutter, but then I never use it, ever. So what is the point? It is beautiful, but if I don't use it, it doesn't matter. So I've saved it far too many times. It's time to actually just say goodbye to it now. And then there's this one here, which is the Gone Rogue from Lois Cosmetics, and I love Lois Cosmetics, but this just isn't a color story that I reach for. I used to be wildly into bright colors, and I would have absolutely gone bananas for this, but my tastes have changed over the last year and a half, I would say. And now I do go far more neutral, although I do still appreciate color, and I'm certainly going to be keeping some colorful palettes. But this one just on its own as a standalone palette, I don't reach for it. Even though I have no complaints about the quality of the shadows, I just don't use them. So let's see if I can find somebody who will. This one here is from Makeup Forever. This is the Starlit palette. It's just so dull, frankly. It reminds me of a Naked palette from Urban Decay. I like that it's nice and cool toned, but I do have other cool toned palettes. This one just doesn't bring anything special to the table, and it's just kind of dusty, frankly. So it's not inspiring, and I just always overlook it. This one kind of hurts my heart a little bit because I used to really love the Born to Run palette, and it is really pretty, but I just don't use it. Like, does that even make sense? Isn't that ridiculous? I guess when you have this many palettes, certain ones will float to the top, and those are the ones that you do reach for, and this one just keeps getting pushed to the background. I'm having a hard time with this one. Maybe I'm gonna have to put this one in purgatory. I was like fairly certain that I was gonna get rid of it, and now the more I look at it, the more I'm second guessing that. Okay, I'm gonna put this in a maybe pile. I'm just gonna start off to the side here, but we'll continue going through here. So the new Nude palette from Huda Beauty. I mean, the colors are up my alley, they really are, but there is an abundance of very light shades in here. There are two pressed glitters that I don't use. Doesn't even look like I even swatched them. This is like a concealer type formula, and it's all like dried out, as it would be because it's just sitting open. And it's just not a palette that I really reach for. There's not a huge range in terms of the depth. Like, this is the deepest you're getting, so it's kind of hard to build really like dimensional looks with this. So it's just one that I overlook. And now I have like the Retro palette from Natasha Denona, which is this color story but punched up more. I would reach for that over this any day, so it's time to say goodbye to that one. This one I have been holding on to for years simply because of the packaging. I just think the packaging's really pretty, but like if I want a picture of a flower, I already have one hanging up. So I don't need to keep a palette just because the packaging is pretty. I don't use the shadows that are inside, so it's just tying up space. And really, if I just want to look at a picture of an orchid, I can just look at a picture of an orchid. So it's time to get rid of that. Smoke Sessions, I had such high hopes for this one, and it's a hot mess. It is a hot mess. Like, look at that. So anytime I do use it, it just obliterates these shimmery shadows, and then I have to press them all back into place, and then they still just like puff back out of the pan. I don't know what happened with this formula, but it is just so finicky and delicate that I just don't like using it because it's just not an easy process. And I do have to bring in other shadows. There's only 2 mattes in here. I'm not upset about having to do that. Clearly I have quite a few to choose from, but it's these shimmers. As pretty as they are, they're just such a pain to work with. Like if you try to use a brush in here, it just like destroys them in the pan. So this is just one that like every time it gets knocked, or if I like breathe too aggressively around it, it just falls apart. And so it's just way too labor intensive, and I can't put up with that. I just genuinely can't. Okay, this is the Pilbara palette from Geology Cosmetics. They are, I believe, a new brand, or at least this is their first palette that they've done. I did talk about this at some point in a previous video. I don't hate it, I really don't. The mattes are far superior than the shimmers in here, which is kind of surprising because mattes I tend to find are a little bit more finicky than shimmers, but regardless, this shimmer here is a standout. Like that one is beautiful, but these ones, they just don't pick up well with a finger, with a brush. Like they just don't have enough payoff. And then on the eyes, they just like, they just don't show up to play aside from this one. That one is absolutely stunning, but it's not a unique shade. It's truly not. I am curious to see what they come out with next, but I'll want to read reviews and hear, like watch videos on it before I put my money towards it. It's an Australian brand, so getting it here to Canada is a pretty penny. They're doing good things with the mattes, but the shimmers definitely need work, and it's just not one that I reach for because I just, overall, I'm not in love with it, so I'm not going to keep it. The Stoned Vibes from Urban Decay. I'm going to keep the mini Stoned Vibes, but this one, as pretty as it is and as different as it is, again, I just don't tend to use it. Like if I really want shimmery shadows on my lid, I'll go for like a Cleona Cosmetics single rather than these ones. Like they're pretty, but there's really nothing particularly special about them. I like that Urban Decay did something different here, but it's not enough for me to keep it, so I'm not gonna. And then this one here, I lost my mind. I thought the pictures of this one looked so pretty. I am sort of hit or miss with Morphe. I'm not a huge fan. That's all I need to say right now. But the color story in here I thought was beautiful, and then I got it home and it's just not as vibrant as the pictures made it look. It's a little bit washed out, and overall it's just not as inspiring as I thought it was going to be based on the pictures. I probably should have just returned it, but I didn't. So here we are decluttering it. Okay, we've got some more here. So this is another one that I found at Winners or Marshalls. I don't know, they're interchangeable to me. This one is from Mented, and this is the Every Night Eyeshadow Palette. Just a very neutral palette. There's really no issues with the quality of it, but I have so many neutral palettes, and ones that I prefer the finish, particularly of the more shimmery shadows. These are much more like satin, I would argue. You've got a row of mattes, a row of satins. I really like super foiled metallic shimmers. This one doesn't deliver it, and so there are other neutral palettes in my collection that I will use far more than this one. This one here from Midas is the Lemonade palette. A good palette, no doubt, but I now have the Citrine palette from BH, which just has a little bit more range to it, a little bit more depth. Obviously this one is much more like purely yellow based. This one has those nice warm browns included in it, so I think I'm going to get more use out of this one than I do out of this one, so I don't need two yellow palettes. This one's going. I've got this one here from NYX. This is the Festival palette. Again, not a bad palette, but it's just colors that I don't reach for very often. I do have them in other palettes, and I don't need that many pinks and purples, so I'm going to pass that along. These, I haven't even swatched them, and I mean, they're pretty, but I just obviously am not as inspired by them as I thought I would be. Both of these are from Juvia's Place. This one is, what is this? This is the Rebel Army, and this is the Rebel Mints. So I haven't even put my fingers in them. I'm not going to. I will just give them away brand new like that. We're going to circle back to this one. Okay, this one here is from Odin's Eye. I'm keeping the other two from the Saga of Freya, but this one, the color story just doesn't do it for me as much as the other ones do, so that's why I'm going to say goodbye to this one. Natasha Zendo. Ugh, Zendon't. I did not get along with this palette at all. Some of these mattes were just so stiff and so frustrating to work with. They just didn't blend properly, they didn't apply nicely, and overall it frustrated me to no end, so I don't want it anymore. And then Sigma, I only just got this one. I ordered it from Look Fantastic, I believe it was. I can't remember. It wasn't necessarily PR, but like I was given a credit to the website, and so I used this with the anyways. I like the quality of the shadows, it's just the color story is not one that I think I'm going to get a ton of use out of. I have worn it a couple of times, but it kind of reminds me of the Subculture palette, which I'm still hemming and hawing about. It's sitting right over here currently. What I mean by that, it's not exactly the same color story. They're certainly not dupes, although there is similarity and overlap. But I find with Subculture, when you blend these shades together, they tend to get a bit muddy just because of the colors that they are. And the same happens with this Sigma one. But I am going to keep the double-ended brush because I really do love Sigma brushes, so I'm going to keep that. But I'm going to let the palette go because I don't predict that I'm going to get a lot of use out of this color story. And then we've got the BH Cotton Candy palette here. This is part of their Sweet Shop collection. Again, I bought all of them for the sake of completion, which is just silliness. I don't need to do that. And this is just one that I've never used. Like I can see that I've never even used the mattes in here. It's not a color story that I use. I don't tend to wear pastels. They just don't look very flattering on me, so I don't need this in my collection. Now, this one here, Huda Beauty, the Remastered Rose Gold palette. I don't really like the mattes in here. I find them to be very stiff to work with. They're workable, but they're not the most blendable palettes that I've had. It's this shade here that I love. I love this shade so much, and I've been comparing it to other shades in other palettes as I've been going through this process, and there's just nothing quite like this one. So I think, can we call it a declutter if I basically treat this as like a project pan? Like instead of trying to pan the entire palette, just that shade, and get as much use out of it as possible. Keep it maybe out of the actual assortment of things, but because I don't think I can. I mean, I can try to destroy the entire palette to see if I can depot that one single, but I suspect I'm going to break everything in that process. So I just want to keep that one shade, but I don't give two figs about the rest of the palette. Some of these other ones, they're okay, but it's this one called Pink Diamond. Oh my goodness. If Huda would release that in a single, I would be so happy because it's gorgeous. So I'm going to call it as if I'm decluttering this because I'm not going to put it back on the shelf, but I'm really just keeping that one shade because I never use any of the rest of it. And maybe I'll make that a focus in 2022 to get as much use out of that as possible, and then let the rest of this go. Alright, I've got a lot of mini palettes here. So I found more of these like monochromatic ones from Colourpop. I honest to God don't know why I bought them all. I don't know. I don't know why I bought them all. So there's the green one, the blue one, and the purple one. I don't use them, don't need them. This one here is from Natasha Denona. This is the Mini Star palette. There's not much wrong with it, it's just I don't use it, so somebody else will. This one here from Essence, the Dancing Green eyeshadow palette. Again, it's just kind of dull and lackluster. I mean, it was like $4, so you can't really expect all that much from it, but I'm just not going to use it very much, so I don't need to have it housed in here. This one is the Nude Light from Huda Beauty. It's very feminine, very girly, very pretty, but I don't use it, so I don't know. And this is one that I like tried to see, especially this shade here, if it would stack up to that other one. Let me just grab that one just for the lulz. There's just something about this shade that's just so sparkly and beautiful. I mean, this is close, but it's just not quite the same. No, I love this. I really wish that was a single. So at any rate, I'm going to pass that one along. Like I said, this one is just kind of going into no man's land. This is another Huda one here. This is Toffee Brown. It's okay. It's just not exciting. And when I'm reaching for more neutral shades, there's other palettes that I reach for over this one. Okay. This one here is also from Odin's Eye. This is the Erd Palette. And it is pretty, but I did experience a lot of creasing with these shimmer shadows. I haven't experienced that in their newer palettes. I've worn those shimmers all day, no problem, but for whatever reason, this one does crease on me, and so I just tend to avoid it. So it's just sitting on my shelf, and as pretty as it is, I don't reach for it. So I'm going to let that one go. And then over here we have the Urban Decay Naked Cherry. And I mean, as much as I love plum toned shades, especially on my eyes, well, obviously on my eyes, but on my eye color is what I mean, there's something about the Naked palettes. The vast majority of them just are dull. They're just not pretty. I don't know what it is. The shimmer shadows that are in here are just more satiny. They're not really punchy at all. The mattes, while blendable, they're just kind of meh. Like, they're not fantastic. So this one I've been saving and saving and saving and not wearing at all, so there's no point in saving it. I will be saving the Naked, I always want to call it Naked Cowboy, the Naked Wild West. This is the best of the Naked ones that I've ever tried, so this one I will definitely be keeping, but Naked Cherry has run its course with me. And then this one here is from Wayne Goss. This is his original Luxury Eye palette, Imperial Topaz, and I love this palette. Like, I raved about it when I reviewed it. Couple things though. The black, when you use it, it like sprinkles down into this shadow. So this one, I don't know if you can tell on camera, it's become quite muddy with the black fallout. And then again, I have so many neutral palettes that this is just not the one that I need to keep. So I'm going to pass this one along. I'm sure one of my friends is going to be very happy to get this. I do have two of his other ones. I keep eyeing the Tourmaline palette, the newest one. I don't need it. I don't need it, so I'm holding firm. They're good palettes. I prefer the other two just because they bring something a little bit more unique to the table. I'm just looking to see if I can see them. Yeah, I can. Let me see them within easy grasp here. So just really quickly, this is the Pearl palette. There we go. It looks like it's all going to be way too light, but this shade actually builds up quite nicely, and it's just beautiful for like everyday wear. And then this one is Pearl Moonstone, and that blue is just so beautiful. This one actually got sent to me by accident by Beautylish. They switched my order with somebody else, so I got to keep this one. So that was a nice little surprise and a nice little happy accident. So I'm going to keep these two because they are a little bit more unique, but the more neutral one I am going to pass along. Alright, we've got a little stack here, but there are 10 in here to talk about. So I do have a few Natasha Denona minis. So this one is Mini Love, Mini Retro, and Mini Zendo. And I just don't reach for them. This is the one that gives me the most pause, Mini Love. But I have this one here from Holiday a few years ago. Every now and then they do bring it back. This is the Cranberry Palette. And if I'm going to go for a pink with a dark purple kind of color story, this is the palette that I'm going to reach for over Mini Love. So there's really no point in holding on to both of them when I find that this one is just so much prettier, frankly, than this one. So I'm going to keep Cranberry. I'll let this one go. And then these two have just been sitting on the shelf for so long, and I just don't reach for them. So it's time to send them on their merry way. This one here from Viseart, I have to say I am like developing a massive crush on Viseart. I truly am. But this one's the Paris edit, and it just, again, where I was saying like some of these palettes just look kind of dull, this is one. And it's also just crumbling for whatever reason. When I opened it, a bunch of like pieces fell out on me right from in here, and then this one over here. This is starting to get really crumbly and it's puffing up on the edge as well. I don't know why that's happening, but it's just sort of disintegrating for no reason. But it just, I don't reach for this one. I do have the, oh gosh, what's it called? The Violette palette, the Étendue palette, and that one is beautiful. It's just so much more vibrant. If I could get it at the bottom of the pile more easily, I would show it to you, but it's buried right now. So suffice it to say, this one just gets overlooked because I prefer the Violette one so much more than this. So I'm going to say goodbye to it. This one here from MAC, this was from holiday, gosh, 2019 maybe? Maybe? I'm not sure. But it's just like a very neutral palette, and again, I have so many of them. And it begs the question, why do you keep buying neutral palettes if you have so many of them? But I can't explain my actions. It is what it is. This is what it is like to be a makeup addict, I guess. But here we are. And it's perfectly fine, perfectly serviceable, but again, I can see, especially in these mattes, that I just don't reach for this. So there's no point keeping it, so gotta let it go. And then, I'm not gonna get rid of them right now because we've got one more month of birthstones coming from BH Cosmetics, and then I do want to rank all 12 of them, but I know that these are ones that I'm not going to use again after I go through that process. So I'm going to include them for now, count them for now, but I am going to set these ones aside so that I can rank all 12. But what we have here, obviously out of order, but at any rate, Aquamarine for March. The only reason, it just comes down to color story for me, frankly. Emerald for May. This one, it's pretty, it is. I found this one to be quite limiting for me personally, so I'm gonna let it go. Ruby was not ruby enough for my liking. It was very pink, especially you can see in this like signature shade over here just how pink it is. Opal for October, again, I just don't wear pastel shades, so this is not going to get any love from me. And then Garnet was just disappointing, frankly. I do like the black pressed glitter, but I do have black loose glitter, so I have a workaround. I don't need to keep it just for that one. So those are the 5 that I'm going to be getting rid of from the Birthstones series. So you can probably expect that these are going to take up the bottom half of the ranking, but at any rate, there are 10 more that I'm saying goodbye to. It is getting harder and harder to decide what I want to part ways with, but I've done it. So, next batch. Up first here is the Too Faced Born This Way Neutral or Natural Nudes palette. Again, it's fine. It's just I don't reach for this one all that often. There's really nothing wrong with it. There was some overlap between these two shades that they really couldn't be distinguished, and these ones were kind of hard to distinguish on the eyes as well. It's a nice mix of shadows, like it really is, but it's just not my favorite formula to work with, so I don't work with it, basically. That's the recurring theme of this video. I mean, it is a declutter video. It shouldn't be shocking that I'm getting rid of things. It's kind of the whole point of it. Anyways, that one is going to be going, as well as this one here from Juvia's Place. This is the Bronzed Rustic palette. It's quite pretty, but again, I just have so many of these shades that this isn't one that I think to reach for, but there are some really pretty shades in there, and I really do like Juvia's Place palettes, or their eyeshadow formula, I guess I should say. Now, these ones here. So, Optimistic AF from BH Cosmetics. It's a very pretty palette. No complaints about how it applies or wears or anything like that. However, I also have Puerto Rico from BH, and they're not dupes, but there is definite similarity. There's definite, like, between the yellows and like this orange and this orange up here, this lighter orange and that one down here. The yellows are the similar. This one and Castillo up here are similar. So while there are certainly differences between them, I don't feel that I need to keep both of them in order to have a really warm toned palette. So I'm just going to keep Puerto Rico and let this one go. Likewise, I'll let that shit go. Here is the color story in here. And then I have Avocado Toast. Again, these are both from BH. And again, not dupes, but a lot of similarity, a lot of overlap, and to the point where it becomes kind of redundant to keep both of them. So I'm going to keep Avocado Toast. I'm going to let this one go. This shade right here is really making me hem and haw because I want to keep that, but I'm sure I have something very similar. And even if I don't, I have enough green shades going on that I can find something to use, because not only am I going to keep Avocado Toast, but I'm also, if I can find it, going to keep Pistachio from BH, which is their all green monochromatic palette. And while there isn't an exact dupe for the one that's in Let That Shit Go, again, I've got options here. I'm going to survive. I will be fine. So keeping this, keeping Avocado Toast, but letting That Shit Go over here. So then I have two others from BH that I'm going to part ways with. So one is Beautiful in Barcelona and the other is Trendy in Tokyo. And again, it just comes down to color story for me. This one is just very, very deep and dark, and it's just not a palette that I ever really reach for. And then Trendy in Tokyo is very bright and vibrant, but I do have other rainbow palettes and I don't need a multitude of them because rainbow just isn't my wheelhouse anymore. So I'm going to pass that along. And then over here we have the by Beauty Bay palette, I believe. Yes, by Beauty Bay. This is the Book of Magic, and it is quite pretty, but I have a very similar color story in the Age of Opulence palette, also from Beauty Bay, and I just happen to like that one more than this, so I don't reach for this one when I have the other, so I'm going to let it go. This one here is the Pretty Little Thoughts palette from Moira Cosmetics. I honestly don't think I've ever used it. It's pretty, it's adorable. I mean, the packaging is just so cute with the little flowers over here and all that. And there are some very pretty shades in here, but when I look at this palette, I can see some looks come together, but it's just not anything that I'm going to be reaching for on a frequent basis at all. And I mean, I've had it for months and months at this point. Like, I think I got this in the spring, and I haven't used it yet, so I really don't think that I'm going to use it, so maybe somebody else will. And then this one here is the Midas Cosmetics and Smoky Glow collab palette that came out a while ago. And it's another one of those palettes that I just keep saving, thinking I'm going to get more use out of it because there are some very pretty shades in here, but it sits at the very back of the shelf and I never reach for it. So that indicates to me that it's time to get rid of it. Likewise, this one here from Lunar Beauty. This is the Strawberry Dream palette. I love Lunar Beauty. I love the formula. I think the mattes and the shimmers are both equally good, but it just comes down to color story. And this one, when I look at it, it just does not inspire me. Certain shades are beautiful, like in particular this one up here is stunning, but I have a shade very similar to that from Cleona, so I'm not really missing out on anything. And I can tell like the design on, like the imprint on the shadow itself isn't even disturbed, so I haven't used it enough to do that. So it's time to find this one a new home. Alright, we are at the final stages here. This is my like undecided pile. I do have a few more that I know for sure I'm going to declutter. But let's go through this first and then we'll go through all the final cuts. So, Subculture. It's iconic at this point, like it truly is, but I don't use it very often. It's one of these palettes that you really need to have a lot of time to devote to using this because it is very finicky. It's beautiful, but it is very finicky, and I often don't have the patience to work with this palette. You know what? I'm gonna let it go because I don't use it. I truly don't. This one here from Uma Beauty, Coming to America. I have to turn my mic on, make sure it's working. Yeah, okay. You know what? I'm going to keep this because I haven't used it very much, but these are so beautiful. And I love this purple shade here. I'm going to keep this one. Okay. We got Norvina from ABH over here. Again, there are some really pretty shades in here, but I don't use this one very often at all. I just find the mattes, like there's a strange selection of mattes, and I wish there's a little bit more versatility. Like they all kind of hit, aside from this one, they all kind of hit on the same depth of color. I guess maybe aside from these two, but I don't know. There's just something about this palette that I just don't get a lot of use out of it. I'm always afraid I'm going to regret decluttering stuff. That's my issue. Colourpop Sandstone. I think this is really pretty. I'm going to keep it. I'm going to keep that one. Okay. This one is the collaboration between Teresa is Dead and Lethal Cosmetics. Lethal is Dead. I've had this for quite some time now, a few months at any rate, and have not used it yet. It's just a color story thing for me, but I do want to try Lethal's formula because I haven't used their shadows before. So I'm going to keep this one, if only to test out the shades. I think it's really pretty, and I'm really proud of Teresa for getting this collab, but it's just not my wheelhouse. Obviously, it's not my collab, so that makes sense, but I really do want to try the formula out, so I'm going to keep that. Oh, Modern Renaissance. This was like groundbreaking when this one came out and really sparked all of these like warm toned palettes that we have now. But now that I look at this one, it's again just sort of on that dull side. Like it's not, I don't know. And yet, when I do wear it, it's always a good makeup day. These shades are really pretty. I do find that the powders in this palette are quite dusty, like they kick up quite a bit of powder, but they blend so nicely. Okay, I'm going to circle back to this one because I really can't decide. I don't use it very often, but it is so pretty. And I don't know if my heart can handle getting rid of Subculture and Modern Renaissance in one fell swoop, so I'm just going to set this one aside for now. Okay, let's tackle this one here. Glam Light, Red Velvet, I think this is called. That would make sense. I have not got much use out of this at all. And I don't know. I mean, that color is stunning right there. That matte shade. And then that purple. Like, Glam Light does have a fantastic formula. Their shimmers are a little bit hit or miss in my books because they can be quite like almost like a jelly-like consistency. Not quite, but almost. Like they're very pliable in the pan. But that said, once they're on the eyes, they are very, very pretty. You know what? I'm going to keep this one. I don't wear it very often, but when I do, I love it. So I'm going to keep that. Lunar Beauty Moonspell, the original one. Again, it's just one of those palettes that I don't use very often just because I don't always know how to pair these shades together. But I can always bring in another palette to work with this one because there's enough beautiful shades in here, like this one here, Nancy, Sabrina, Prue, Mary. Like there's some very beautiful shades in here and some really unique shades too. Yeah, I'm gonna keep this. I am gonna keep this one. Okay. Huda Beauty Gold. Now, I love this palette for this shade in particular. Like, the gold in the gold palette, first of all, I think it should have been in the center because it is so incredibly beautiful. Like, and I have tried to find other golds like this in my collection, and I don't have it. So, although the rest of it is really kind of like nothing exciting, I want to keep it for that shade because it's stunning. Okay, I'm going to keep that. And then over here we have Fenty Beauty. This is the Snap Shadow in number 10. And it's a green and gold. But this gold is nowhere near as pretty as the other one, and I do have tons of green shades, so I'm going to say goodbye to that. Okay. Then we have the Colourpop and Raw Beauty Christie collab at Forest Sight. And this is such a pretty color story. Like, just such nice, rich, and earthy tones. I don't wear it a lot, but now that I'm looking at it and reminding myself just how beautiful it is, this is one that I definitely want to give more attention to, so I do want to keep this one. Also, if you hear a ton of noise in the background, my daughter just came home with her friend from school, and they're loud. They're 9-year-old girls, and they're loud, so sorry about it, but that's what it is. Alright, Alien Cosmetics here, Strawberry Milkshake. These shades, individually, are very, very pretty. I don't know how to make this palette work, just in and of itself, but because these shades are so pretty, like one pan to the next, maybe minus this one, that's not very pretty, but at any rate, the rest of them, and because like I don't have another green like this that I can think of off the top of my head, at any rate, not even in the BH palettes, or this color, I want to keep this palette, and I also just want to get some use out of this because I want to test out the Alien Cosmetics formula. Obviously I bought this palette to do that and then just never did, because they do have some other palettes with color stories that are more my speed, but the cost of shipping to Canada is so high that I want to make sure I really like their matte and their shimmer formulas before I invest in further palettes from them. So want to keep that. Natasha Denona Love. Now, this isn't one that frustrates me, not like Zendo, but I also just don't use it very often. Like, at all. I don't use it at all. I don't use it at all. Why am I keeping it? There we go. Okay, Too Faced Just Peachy Mattes. I've had this for a long time. And I keep saving it every time I do a declutter because I don't know what it is. There's something about this palette that I just really, really like. It kind of rounds out the Modern Renaissance one, to be honest. And I am getting more into all matte looks, so I think I would get more use out of this now than I have. Oh, I don't know. Why is decluttering so hard? Okay, I'm gonna keep it. I'm gonna keep that one. Okay, Tartlet in Bloom. Now, here's the thing. So this is the most used palette that I have. I've talked about it a million times because I think it's just like the very definition of a staple palette. This is just so beginner friendly, so user friendly, just like a fantastic investment to have in your collection. But I've used it so much, and I just bought the Full Bloom palette, which isn't a dupe, like these same colors aren't replicated, but very similar shades are, that I'm questioning, like, do I need to keep this when I have that one? What do I do? I don't know what to do. And at the same time, I'm like, I'm so close to finishing pans in here that, like, I just, it's like a personal vendetta at this point. Like, I just kind of want to finish them, so, I don't know what to do. I think I'd regret it more if I decluttered it, to be honest. Especially because I'm so close. Like, I've never panned an entire shadow before, so yeah, I'm gonna keep it. I'm gonna keep that. Okay. So then we have the Be Perfect Carnival 3 palette. It's massive. It's such a beast. But there are some really fun and really beautiful shades in here. Some really vibrant greens and turquoises. Some of these fuchsia kind of shades are just like sublime. They're so pretty. Again, not a palette that I reach for very often, but I think it's a good one to have on hand because it's got like pretty much every shade I could need. And because I've just gotten rid of all of those other Colourpop colorful palettes, I want to keep this one just to have the variety, so I'm going to keep that, which then brings us to the final two hums and haws here. Modern Renaissance. Do I keep it or do I say goodbye? Oh gosh. I'm gonna keep it. I'm gonna keep it. I'm gonna keep it, and we'll see. The next time I do a declutter, which is probably gonna be like months from now, but the next time I do one, I'll see how much use I've gotten, especially like whittling out so many from my collection and like revisiting all of these to really see what they all offer. And then we have Born to Run. You know what? I do this every time. I save this every time I declutter and then I don't use it. So I'm going to learn from that and I'm going to say goodbye to it. So let me then just bring out the last of the declutter pile. What do we got here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 9. 9. Okay, that brings us perfectly to the number that I wanted to declutter. Okay, so I've already talked about these ones. Let's quickly go through what we've got sitting here and then we're done. Okay, Violet Voss Wild Dahlia. I don't really have any issues with this. Like, I find Violet Voss to be a little hit or miss. Sometimes their shadows are great, sometimes not so much, and they can show a lot of signs of wear throughout the day. This one holds up well. It's kind of like a one-trick pony. Like, you can't really get much variety out of it. It's all along that same tone, really. Even with the shimmers, there's really not much difference going on one from the next. So it's just not a very inspiring palette. I don't use it very often. Same with this one here from Juvia's Place. This is the Melissa palette, just a little quad that came out last year. It's pretty. I don't use it. I'm going to keep the blue one, though, that they came out with. I can see it actually sitting right here. This is the Disco Party, and this one is just so stunning. Like, so gorgeous and looks so beautiful on the eyes that I definitely want to keep that, but this one I just don't use. Okay, Colored Rain. This is the Queen of Hearts palette. You know what? I said I was going to get rid of that, but yeah, it's very similar to Modern Renaissance, like same kind of idea with those berry tones and the deep orange. But I decided I was going to keep Modern Renaissance. I do like this formula a little bit better than the Colored Rain formula, so I'm going to pass that one along. And then the last, I've got two palettes sitting here. So this is the Viseart Warm Edit, and then the Natasha Denona Sunrise palette. I can see, again, this one here is puffed right out of the pan, and you can see, like, it's just crumbling apart. So these are very delicate. I don't know what's going on. But if you look at them, see, there's like big chunks are just falling out of that shadow. Anyways, there's a lot of overlap going on here. Not exact dupes for sure, but very, very similar. Just that the Natasha Denona one is just a little bit punchier. Like, if you look at the yellow here versus the yellow here, hopefully, I mean, this isn't the best lighting setup for this, but, well, you can, if it's like Inception, there we go. Anyways, this is a little bit brighter than this one. This orange is just a little bit more unique than this one in here, but there is a lot of similarity between these two palettes, so I really don't need both. This one is far more finicky. Look, even more is falling out. I didn't do anything to this palette, and it's just a little bit more subdued and dull, so I'm going to say no to that one, but I am going to keep the Natasha Denona Sunrise palette. Okay, we have got through the declutter, so now I'm just going to insert a little clip of a video that I took showing you how all of my palettes are now organized. So this is where I keep a lot of my really small palettes, just because I find that they can take up a lot of space on the shelf, but they fit into this little holder really nicely, so I keep as many of them in here as I can. And the rest of my palettes I have housed on this bookshelf here. And this is a new sort of format for me. I normally have them like stacked up like this, or I have actual holders to hold everything in place. But I figured I would do them like books, and I'm actually really liking how that looks because I can see pretty much everything that I own now at a glance. And if I can see it, there is a much better chance that I'm actually going to use it. So I'm very happy with the efforts that I've made and very excited to reacquaint myself with some of these palettes that I haven't used in ages. All right, so that was quite the journey, and I obviously at this point have no idea how long this video is ultimately going to end up being, but I know how long I spent staring at my palettes and making the decisions that I made, and it was quite the journey. But I started off with 219 palettes and I now have 150. So I decluttered 69 palettes, which is almost a third of what my starting collection was. And I feel rather torn about that, to be honest. On the one hand, I feel freer, I feel lighter. I'm certainly very happy with how everything is organized now. But on the other hand, it's also very hard to do because I'm seeing dollars that I have spent that I haven't put to good use or that have just disappointed me and I don't want to use them. And there's also just a lot of waste. So like I said at the beginning, I do try to rehome these palettes as best as possible, but it is hard to find homes for 70 palettes. So inevitably, some of them are going to end up in the bin, and I don't feel great about that. So it is still a bit of a learning curve for me trying to establish this balance between what I purchase for the sake of reviews, what I purchase because I personally want it as an individual consumer, what I purchase because I'm influenced by hype, and trying to balance that against how many dollars am I expending, how much space do I have, and reasonably, how much time do I have to devote to these items in terms of filming reviews or even just daily use. If you have 200 palettes, there's only 365 days in the year. Even if you rotate them, you're not getting 2 times use out of each palette in the course of a year. When you think about it that way, it's kind of mind-blowing, to be honest. So all that to say, I don't have the answers to that particular problem, but I am cognizant of it. And every time I do these declutters, I remind myself that establishing that balance and just striving towards it is an important task for me to do. So that is that on that. With everything said, I'm going to end the video here. If you enjoyed it, please give the video a thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed already, please consider doing so because it makes my heart happy. So with all that said, I'm going to wrap it up here. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch, and I will see you in my next video. Until then, just be a decent human being. Bye for now.